Mine was like. I've had a couple of them, like, oh, I think they want to buy, but then one like, so it's like. I feel like there's people that like will be there in the long term, like in the short term, like I need to check. I mean, we're doing okay, but like, I just. The anxiety part of me, if I question, if I have to. I'm thinking, well. So my husband's like, "We're fine, you're good."
And that's great to
He's
have
good.
that
Yeah,
support.
he's like, you just need to keep doing open house, and he's very much like. "We gotta figure out a way to keep doing it." So he's supportive.
That's wonderful. That's great. So for those of you that are joining us on Zoom this morning and later on.
Some contract people for you.
Okay.
We are in the
Oh, okay. Well, I saw you sitting back in the kitchen, so all right. I had no idea you were looking for me. All right. Thanks, Laura. Oh my gosh, I have a full, see, I was just saying to Serenity earlier.
It's in North.
Oh, oh, see, I just use cream cheese frosting. All right, so for those of you joining us on Zoom and on Facebook later, so, oh, no, I do. Autumn, and I'm guessing that's Olga again this morning. She hasn't turned her, yeah.
Yes,
Was that
hello.
who she was, as with
Yeah.
that Olga last week, so. All
Yep,
right, and I've
hi.
got some people here live in the classroom again this morning, so that's always exciting too. So we're gonna take here just a minute to introduce ourselves here, but I just also wanted to let everyone know that on Zoom that we may take a few minutes at the beginning of this class, even though this is the, writing the contracts class, it's all very important. We were kind of commiserating again about, new agent and, open houses and how they go and all that kind of stuff. So that's what Serenity and Laura were talking about. So here, everybody here in the classroom, take just a minute to introduce yourself. And if I had the owl going, I don't, but I'm gonna turn this around. Yeah. Okay, there's Serenity and a couple of people I don't know yet. So, all right. Uh-huh.
What do you mean saying?
Just introduce yourself and just your 30-second elevator speech about you, where you are in the launch process and how things are going.
Okay, so I am Serenity Cooper. I'm dual career and
taking the lead gen class to figure out what I want to do with lead genning. And I feel like I'm getting closer to where I need to be, like getting leads. It's just like nurturing them and finding leads now, getting in the pipeline.
Okay, all right.
I'm Jocelyn Cervantes. I'm kind of starting to learn everything right now. Haven't really started anywhere. This is my
Okay.
first conference.
Okay, all right, okay, yeah, well, welcome. And did you say Jocelyn?
Jocelyn.
And I'm saying it right, Jocelyn? Okay, all right, all right.
Hi, I'm Doug Porter. I'm really glad I'm in this contract class. The contracts kind of bog me up, and I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing for my client. And I guess I'm kind of like figure out what you want, figure out how to get it, then get it. So that's why I'm here.
Okay, great attitude, all right, love that, okay. And then
I'm
here's
Laura, and I am on the Thrive team and I've been admin for 2.5 years and I just switched over and got licensed in February and figured it all out. Well, it's all, you know, it's easy. You know, yeah, it's a lot to learn. So
Uh-huh.
I just joined
You
lots
saw all
of-
those successful agents on the Thrive team and thought, well, I can do that.
Yeah, learning. Yeah, so I was doing lots of it. I thought I, you know, I knew I had to learn things. But I realized it's not that. So it's a team of agents that we work together during the office. And we're part of the office.
They're like a whole box.
Yeah.
They're,
great.
Yeah.
they are back
Right.
here in this back corner
Yeah.
back here, and their big office is the one in the corner, but then they've got some little satellite offices over there too. So.
So they're great. They inspired me. Just Anne Hyde was on it, and she was like, "Oh, it's so much fun, it's so good that." She said, just caution me like that, so make sure you don't get into learning paralysis where you like, you know, like, remember to do as you learn.
Exactly, well, yeah, we want, oh, great point,
Yeah.
Laura, thanks for bringing that up.
I just don't know.
There are some personalities that think, well, I don't know enough, I don't know enough, I need to know more, I need to know more. And you know, that is one thing that we feel very strongly about in the launch program is that, yes, we want you to learn, but we also understand that you need to eat, you need to pay bills, and you know, so we want you productive as soon as possible. So yes, the learning paralysis thing, but I'll give a little a little blurb here for it. So the Thrive team is at one of, I think, probably the biggest team here at the brokerage, led by Sam Lind. And Sam has been selling real estate almost as long as I have, not quite. But super guy. Now he is I put him in the same category as I do with Chad Taylor. If you ever have an opportunity to ever hear either one of them speak, you need to go. They both know the ins and outs. They are both very business minded, know what is successful. You know, that's the thing. We all want, everyone needs to put their own little special sauce on everything that they do. But there are certain things that's like, don't reinvent the wheel, right? And Sam is a little more reserved and doesn't speak as much, you know, doesn't, but so when we do get him to lead something, it's really quite a coup, and everyone should go listen to anything that Sam ever has to say. So yeah, okay. All right, so that's our little blurb there. Autumn, I know, is usually at her other job and doesn't talk a whole lot in here, but if either Autumn or Olgi want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm
There's
Olgi
Olgi,
Kenny.
right.
Hey, I'm actually about to head over your ways to catch the last bit of class in person.
Are you talking?
Oh, yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Okay, if you're saying something, I'm sorry, we can't hear you in here.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I don't think it matters if I turn this off.
Any luck now?
Yes, yep, now, yep.
Oh, perfect. Okay. My name is Olgi Kenny, and I am also on the Thrive team. So I am about actually going to head into the office right now to catch the tail end of the class in person. So I'll see you soon.
Okay.
But yeah, new agent, trying to, as you guys were saying, learn the ins and outs of doing launch, but also learning by doing. So that fine line.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, well, okay, we'll see you soon then.
Sounds good.
All right, okay, so today is the first of two classes this week, today and Wednesday morning. Are really all about writing contracts. Last week, we talked about the miscellaneous documents and buyer agency and listing agreements. And there's some changes coming in those two. There are some changes coming in the contracts also, but today we're just going to talk about the basics, the things that have not changed and probably never will change about writing a contract. And I love what Doug said. Our entire purpose about doing this is that we want you to be doing the absolute best that you can for your clients. And, you know, there are going to be some customers out there too, and we have to do the best that we can for them as well. And so as Kristen likes to say, your buyer may be out negotiated on a contract, and there's, you know, very little we can do about that. Your buyer always makes the decision on what to offer, what terms. Your job is to help them determine what those correct terms are. We never make the decision ever, ever, ever for our buyer. And you will be asked that. Your buyer will say, well, what do you think we should do? And so we'll kind of get to, you know, some of those answers here pretty soon, but we never make those decisions for them. It is always them. But you will never be outmaneuvered on a contract if you do everything the right way. And that's our purpose here, is to help you learn the right way to do a contract. I know Serenity's gone through the process a little bit, writing we have a Wednesday Night Warriors Challenge, which is something that we want you all to participate in. Wednesday Night Warriors, it's certainly not a required attendance, you know, for launch, but I certainly encourage it. I encourage it with other experienced agents as well when I run across them in the office. It originally started out as a time for those people that do work another job and real estate is their second career currently. So for them to get together for the community and get to know each other and activities and that kind of thing. Yeah, and so there's and it really is agent driven. We want to do, you know, launch is what we want you to know. Wednesday Night Warriors is a little bit more of like, well, what do you want to know, right? Because there's the things that you think you need to know are not necessarily things that are going to get you up and going right now, and that's what launch is all about. Wednesday Night Warriors is, okay, now let's put a little bit of frill on all of that kind of stuff. And so one thing that we kind of started doing was I pick a house on MLS, and so you can go look at the house. I kind of encourage you to go with other people, with other launch agents. I don't encourage you to show the property necessarily to a client or customer, but to go with other launch agents and discuss, take a look at it with your realtor eyes, and then also maybe through your buyer's eyes. This is the one and only time where you will be determining a purchase price on this property, but I pick a vacant one so that we're not kicking people out of their house. Usually and a lot of times I really try to choose one that's been on the market for a while. That's for you to help you determine, well, why has it been on the market for a while? If other properties in that area have sold, why hasn't this one? There's usually a good reason for that. Sometimes it's easy to find and sometimes it's not. But it's a vacant property, been on for a while, and you know, sometimes I try to find one with another little trick in there. So, you know, something that you would have learned in the contracts class if you had been paying attention. And so then I want you to write an offer. The expectation is that you write an offer just as you would. When you tell me that you're going to participate in this challenge, then I will send you a buyer scenario and basically tell you what the buyer is looking for, you know, what you get a pre-approval letter just as you would with a real buyer. Kind of tell you what they're hoping for, you know, maybe they're renting and they need, you know, at 45 days for their closing, what their financial limitations might be, you know, all those kinds of things. Just as all those things that you need to know about your buyer before you would write an offer in real life. And so then the expectation is you put together a buyer agency folder in Dotloop and you write the offer on behalf of that buyer. When Damon Nichols that was with our launch, was one of the launch coaches for a while, was really the one, he and I kind of developed this together. He thought, well, this is a great opportunity for you to learn how to look at the market, do a market analysis, what would be a good, reasonable, objective offer for this, which is really our job. So I told you we'd get to an answer here. You will inevitably be asked by buyers, well, what do you think we should offer? What do you think we should do? And we can't answer that. The best thing that we can do for them is to do a market analysis for them and tell them, based on those, basically boil down to price per square foot. And then a little bit of adjustment depending on condition of that property and how it compares to the other properties that have sold. Everyone, I'm assuming that everyone learned what a market analysis is in their pre-license class, but a market analysis is when we look at the properties that have sold, the properties that are competition for this current property. And then when we do a market analysis, we're also looking at the ones that haven't sold, the expireds. They were on for a period of time and didn't sell. Why didn't they? So putting all of that information together, but then kind of homing in on the ones that have sold, might they have been attractive to a buyer? And at what price per square foot did they sell? So that's what our market analysis basically boiled down to. So you can present one of those to your buyer and say, well, this is what the numbers tell me a reasonable offer would be. In fact, what I tell my buyers when I'm doing this process is, I'm going to do a market analysis for you on this property as if you already owned the property and you called me to put it on to sell. Right? This would be a reasonable expectation for a sales price. But then I also temper that with my buyers saying that, but you, buyer, are the only one that knows what it's worth to you, right? It doesn't matter what I would offer for the property, so I might be looking at it with a completely different objective in mind. So, all right. So getting ready to write an offer, that's what we're really going to talk about this morning. And as we do for everything, I'm going to pull up Kristen's Power Tools. And I'm sharing that here. So far, technology is working for me this morning. We'll see how it goes. And then share screen here. Kristen has a power tool called Ready to Make an Offer. And I keep threatening that we need to update this just a little bit. As you can tell, it's got our old logo up in the top left-hand corner there. We're no longer KW Key Partners. We are now KW in Kansas City Metro. So we at least need to update that. And there are some things here that are a few years old. Our world has changed just a little bit, but the basics are the same. Just kind of like, as I said earlier, don't reinvent the wheel. The basic things are the same. I'll tell you what's a little bit different here. And how do we access Kristen's Power Tools? Through the portal. And if you don't know what the portal is, go talk with Yvette. But our office portal and in documents. And then as you go on, as you get into documents, Kristen's Power Tools is another folder within that. So, and from there, you just have to search for it. They're not in alphabetical order. I don't know what order they're in, and there are lots and lots and lots of documents in there, but it is called Ready to Make an Offer. So you can look for it that way. I also keep threatening that we're going to clean up Kristen's Power Tools folder too, but Serenity just said that would be nice, right? Because there's a lot of really good information in there, but I think it can probably be a little chiseled down just a little bit. All right, so we're here, but I also then just have this available if for anyone who's interested, just let me know. I will email this to you so you don't have to go through that whole search process. Okay, Doug raised his hand. All right, Doug, I will need your email address. Okay, and that reminds me, because overnight I thought one thing that I really wanted to start with this morning, because when I redo this form, I'm going to put this front and center, top of the list here. Ready to make an offer when you're in launch. Make sure that you are, your launch agent, your launch coaches will tell you something just a little bit different, but it will sound different, but it's really the same thing. you need to start things in Command, right? All of you need to learn Command. That's our internal platform on which you can keep track of your 32 touch program, your clients and customers, the database, what I call my customer care list. All of that, it's got great marketing tools in it. That's kind of one of the things we were talking about earlier today, finding an 8x8 program, which is keeping in contact with someone who's come through an open house for you, or someone that you just met, doesn't have to be open house. So you need to start everything in Command because your people will be there, and then you assign them to an opportunity, and that's the lingo in Command for a contract, writing it or getting a listing agreement or a buyer agency agreement. Excuse me. Pardon me. But what I look at is your dot loop, right? So two separate programs, but they do work together. You can merge once you have something started in a Command and an opportunity and a loop and dot loop for whatever the buyer agency or your buyers folder or your listing folder. And then with a click of a button, you merge the two. I only look at your dot loop stuff. So that's where that we need to have that there. Start things in dot loop because that's where you send things to buyers and sellers for signatures and you share with the other agent through dot loop. And then you have to upload it into your opportunity in Command. All right. I am not a Command expert. I kind of know the basics. What I just told you is really kind of exhaust the knowledge that I have, but I can maybe get you through something. But also, if in the heat of the moment, if you meet someone in an open house on a Saturday or Sunday, you can start the whole thing in dot loop and make your opportunity later. And if you're calling me for help, which I hope you do, that's my purpose for being here. That's what I will tell you to do. Just start a loop and we'll get it into Command later. You have to get it into Command eventually because that's where compliance looks at it to make sure that everything is, the way it's supposed to be on both sides. I look at your documents to make sure you're doing things the right way. And we have one more. Hey, Mark, right? Okay, all right, man, and Ogie will be here. Man, I'm gonna run out of chairs, but
Can't spread out as much.
right, exactly. And, I'm kind of like a rabbit or a squirrel. I kind of lose track there. But so I'm going to tell you to start things in Command. All right. So I'm going to tell you to start things in dot loop because we can get it into Command later. You need to get it into Command because compliance looks at it and it has to go through that whole process for you to get paid. And that is really truly why we're all here, right? Right. That commission check. All right. So, everyone's still looking for Laura's had a commission check, right? Yes, you've had a successful closing, right? All right, so she's the star of the class. So yeah, everyone else in here is still looking for their first commission check, and that's our whole goal here. All right, so I'm going to tell you to start things in dot loop. Two things that you need to know. You need to add me to your loop in dot loop. And I'm going to share this too. All right, so this is kind of a pretend, this is how I tell the agents I want to participate in the Wednesday night challenge, even though this is kind of an old one now at this point, but I want you to practice writing contracts, whether you do it on the Wednesday Night Warriors Challenge or just on your own. Go pick your own house, which I think would be a great activity too, a house in your neighborhood or one that you're curious about. Because the whole point is we don't want you writing your first contract for a real live person. There is nothing that's going to shake you up more than that, right? We want you to be practiced at doing this so that you're not taken by surprise. All right. So, but this was, I kind of put together for our Wednesday Night Warriors Challenge. And so then as we get down here to the buyer documents, that's kind of a complete buyer's loop there, a buyer's folder in the loop. But what I'm talking about here is down here in people. All right, you're going to, I don't have anybody added to this. It will always have your name here because you'll be in your dot loop account. And so it will say, you know, whatever your name is, and then and you will put your own role over here. It's a drop-down menu. Chances are, if you're at this stage, you're the buying agent here. But another thing that I wanted to show, because this is something that people forget about, or they don't remember typically but I think that sometimes we don't actually talk about it enough. I'm going to add a person here. In your loop, you need to add me. In all of your loops, you need to add me. And it's going to really confuse .loop here because I'm trying to put myself in. Oops. Got an extra letter in there. Contracts, plural, contracts coach at kwkey.com. It's just easier for us not to change that email address, you know, mess with .loop a little bit if we tried to do that. Contracts coach at kwkey.com. Don't go on and find my own personal email address. It's different than that. I want everything coming through here. So contracts coach at kwkey.com. Add me. And then, it'll have my, I put that in my name rather than, that's okay, because I didn't want to confuse them. See this little right here, this little box, add to my team, put a check mark there. And you'll get that pop up and it'll tell you that, oh, are you sure you want to do this? Because you can't undo this, right? But add to your team. I need to be added to your team. The reason for that is now and that will send me an email that says Laura Belt wants to collaborate on a transaction. And I will accept that. I have to accept that. And you'll get a notification that I have accepted your invitation. That way you don't have to share anything with me. I now have complete access to your loop, which is where we want to be. Believe me, I don't care what your loop looks like, other than I just need to make sure that you have the correct documents in there and that they are done correctly. I don't care if you have extra stuff in there, and I might, you know, send you an email to help you clean it up. It's like, well, you don't need this, so we can archive that. But believe me, I do not go on and look at your loops just for fun. I don't have the time or energy to do that. Yes,
I
Doug?
got a question like, up here says, .loop beta is here, give it a try. What is beta?
You need to get with Yvette
Okay.
to make sure that your account is all set up properly. You shouldn't be getting that. Okay. Okay. Or if you do, she'll tell you how to get rid of it. Okay. All right. Yeah. I have very limited knowledge and I know my limitations. That's what but I always know the right person to send you to. So, all right. Good question though. Anytime you have a question, and I know this is all brand new and we just kind of start throwing these terms out at you, and I apologize for that. It will all start to make sense at some point. All right, so make sure that you add me to your loop. Then the other thing that I want to make sure that everyone has is my phone number. Because as I said, I don't go on and look at your loops for fun. I only go on and look at your loops when you tell me you have something for me to look at. And some of then our conversation will be through a text message if everyone texts, or I send you an email. Sometimes when I'm going over your contract documents, an email is the easiest and best way for me to do that. So I'll respond to you in that way. But so I want everybody, I want to make sure that everybody has my phone number, 913-219-2289. And for those of you that we haven't had a text before, go ahead and send me a text now. And as I say that,
It's on the board.
yeah, it's written up there too. Because this is where I teach. Also. Okay.
So, okay, what's your role on this?
You can put me as anything. You can put me as admin. Don't put me as broker, because you'll have a broker for some things. I can be admin, I can be other. It really doesn't matter. I just don't want to be the buying agent or the listing agent or the buyer or the seller.
But don't put your name in the other.
I was putting it in the wrong place when I was doing it. So yeah, if I get back to that screen. So if I put my name in here, here, I'm going to put somebody else. Okay, so put the name in there. If on the second time you do it, I think my email then pops up automatically. It's just the first time. And so then down here, an email. Contracts coach at KW Key. And then, yes, you have to assign me a role. And again, I don't care, admin or other are probably, the two best. But just as long as I'm not someone that is expected to sign anything, because I don't get involved in your contracts other than looking them over. Just make sure that you check that box. And then if you start communicating with me about, say, hey, I just started a loop, and can you take a look at it? I will tell you, well, I haven't gotten the invitation yet. So make sure you check the box on my profile. Do the same thing with your coach. Kristen will, if you haven't been assigned a coach yet, Kristen will assign you a coach and do the same thing with them. Your coach, and I don't even want to say that your coach is when you're writing a contract is your first contact. If you find your coach and if you're here in the office and they're here in the office, absolutely, they will help you through the process. But I am the contracts coach. And so I kind of expect to be your first communication here. All right. But I will also ask you have you watched the videos on writing the contracts? Have you practiced writing a contract? And that's not a judgmental question. That's just letting me know, well, how much time am I going to be spending with you here, right? I do have a life outside and honest, and I completely understand this. I also still sell real estate. And so I know that our busy times are in the evenings and on weekends. I completely get that. And I accepted that when I accepted this role. But on the other hand, I do have a life too. So we are also asked anytime that you think you're going to be going on a listing appointment, anytime you think you're going to be, I like to know when you're doing open houses because, sometimes you're lucky enough to pick someone up at an open house. Or if you are going to be out showing properties, please just text me a heads up. Lynn, I'm going to be showing properties this afternoon. Don't know if I'm going to be writing an offer or not. So just so I know that, because then again, if I've got, something that I can't get out of, later on, then I will tell you, okay, well, be sure you're talking with your coach about that. I won't be available until after 9 o'clock, or whatever, just for communication purposes. I do try to make myself available. You are going to be nervous. I hope that you're nervous. I expect everyone to have some butterflies in their stomach when they're writing a contract. I still do. I've been doing this 39 years and I still have a little bit of butterflies in my stomach when I sit down to do this. I expect everyone to. You are dealing with probably one of the biggest investments that a buyer is ever going to make in their life. A lot of money. And this is a legal document. Everything you do is a legal document. And I just realized that I've been saying this all about contracts, and all of that's very true. I need to see your listing agreements before you send them for signatures. I need to see your buyer agency agreements before you send them for signatures, right? Those are a little less time intensive, but still, I think you should be just a little bit nervous when you're doing it because, and here's what we like to say here. We want you to look professional. We want you to be, as Doug pointed out, we want you to be doing the best job possible for your buyers, sellers, whether they're clients or customers. But we also like to say these are legal documents. It is a lot easier for us to keep you out of trouble by looking at your paperwork first than to get you out of trouble when you've done something rogue. Okay. All right. So I didn't say wrong. I said rogue. All right. All right. So there we are. So when you are ready to write an offer, you are going to get your loop started. You're going to get the buyer documents, even if you've started them in a loop, you're going to start a separate folder because that's easy to do here in .loop. You're going to have your buyer documents down here, and then you're going to have a new folder for your contract documents. They should be separate. I think they should be very separate in .loop. There's a little bit of crossover between them, but most of the things in your buyer documents do not go to the other side of the transaction. You don't want them to, all right? Your buyer agency agreement, that's just between you and the broker and the client. the franchise and affiliated business, which is now a different form, so I need to update this a little bit too. Our affiliated business form. That we don't send that to the other side of the transaction. You will occasionally see those from other companies coming to you for your buyer to sign, but we don't require the other side of the transaction to sign that. Certainly, your buyer's estimated expense worksheet is not something that goes to the other side of the transaction. The lead-based paint brochure stays within the buyer. And my suggestion is that we put both states brokerage disclosure forms in a buyer loop. So whichever one applies there. And the inspection advisory, that's just for your buyer also. But the things that will be kind of a crossover, I've already put up here, our pre-approval letter, right? The seller's disclosure that will be on the listing that your buyer has to sign. I like to keep those in both of those because I usually send it to the buyer before we ever go look at the property, but that's a whole other discussion. So, and I'll just keep it in there, but make a copy into the contracts folder once it's signed by your buyer. And so on this one, you can tell the property that I chose there did have a seller's disclosure, a lead-based paint disclosure. The listing company did have the co-op franchise in there. So all of these things you're going to be pulling over from MLS. You have to download them onto your system and then into .loop. There's no easy way to do that. If it's something that's emailed to you, but this isn't a .loop classroom, we're not going to get there. And then on this one, they had a lot of extra stuff that I thought was important. Doesn't require any signatures for anything from any party, but this one had a foundation invoice. They had some work done, the sewer line insurance, because home buyers in a lot of neighborhoods around Kansas City have the ability to buy insurance that will pay at least the partial bill for a sewer line clean out. And Laura said, yeah, I know, that's why I was saying, you're right. And they never pay for the whole thing. They're a pain to work with, they're a pain to, but, you know, anytime we can cut anything off of that bill, because that can be very, very, very expensive. Same thing with the water lines coming in. Yes,
So you
sir.
said they had the warranty, and you just included that in the .loop so they would have the paperwork.
Well, okay, two separate things there. I was talking about the sewer line insurance that can be purchased from a third party, but the homeowner does that. But the warranty is also another thing there too, right? If that's something that's negotiated, either offered by the seller, and we know that there's one there, I'll ask for that to put in here, or if the one becomes part of our negotiations. Absolutely. Yep. Good point. All right. And then you'll also see that I have a CMA in here. Right? Because I did that. I did that for these pretend buyers that I had. All right. This is an internal CMA. You'll find if you were out there playing around on MLS, and again, I encourage you all to go out and play with MLS, play with .loop, play with Command. I promise you, you're not going to break anything. Right? Play with these contracts. But this is our internal CMA. There are some available for you out on MLS. And if you're in a real time crunch, I have used those in a real time crunch. This one takes me probably an hour and a half to do properly. But I like this one because it just checks all of the boxes that I'm looking for in a market analysis. It allows me to manipulate the numbers that come from MLS. And I don't mean that in a bad way. You know, again, not an MLS class either, but sometimes the tax information or the square footage information is not completely up to date on a property. And if you're doing a CMA through MLS, you can't do anything about that. And so I transfer everything over. This is an Excel spreadsheet that David Conderman has made available again in our portal in the documents. So anyway, and then also it's colorful. It's got a lot of numbers on it, you know, for those people that like numbers. This checks that box. For people that don't really like numbers, but like pretty things to look at, you know, it's got the, you know, it's all color coded, how everything compares to everything. So that's a whole separate class too. David usually does try to teach a class on using this once a quarter, but I don't think he has lately. So I need to talk to him about that. Okay. All right. Because that's available to everyone. All right. So here's what your .loop should kind of look like down here in my buyer documents. And make sure that you name your folders, because again, you get very confused. Spread everything, separate everything out, whether it's a buyer document or a contract document. And then name them appropriately. You're the one that's going to be looking for them in here, and if you just keep, as they are pulled over, some things are not going to make sense to you. So you can rename these individual documents, you can name your folders. All right, back to ready to make an offer. Almost through our first hour, and I haven't gotten very far with that at all. I think that's what I need to do here. All right, so must have these in place first. So our agency disclosure brochure, that's the brokerage disclosure brochure that I talk about, the Kansas or Missouri. I think you should have one of each and have shared them with your buyer, because buyers sometimes don't know which side of state line they really need to be on. Our exclusive buyer agency contract, or as we're coming into this whole, brand new world, we still expect you to have an exclusive buyer agency agreement, but it could also be a limited services transaction broker agreement. There goes Angel. So whatever you are, however you are representing or not representing that buyer, we just need something in there. Something has to be in there. Pre-approval letter should have had that too. Documents you'll need for your offer: the residential real estate sales contract. In .loop, they are, this is where, if Olgie or Autumn could tell me, I think this follows me when I change screens, but I'm not sure. Okay, so back here in .loop, actually don't have to do that. In our
So
20
far, I'm still seeing the same sheet.
Okay, so, all right, so let me. Thank you for letting me know.
Of course, and I'm actually about to walk in, so I'll see you in a
Okay,
second.
all right, very good. All right, when you get set up in your .loop, you're going to see all of it. Well, I have more templates than you will, but you're going to see some templates listed out here. Our KWKC Metro forms, those are our internal customized forms. That'll be your listing agreement, your buyer agency agreement. And in the brand new world that we're coming to, Lynn and I are working very hard on getting our customized forms ready for the same premiere that we will on all the KCRAR forms, which is on the 14th of August. So I know I've kind of been warning everybody, we might be using KCRAR forms for a while, but these are our internal forms. Then you'll see a couple of the Heartland MLS forms, those will show up for you there. We have the 2024 KCRR interactive forms, which is every single form that you can possibly ever use from KCRAR. Again, that's a huge long list. Most of the ones that you're going to find easier to find are in the 2024 KCRAR residential forms. And as you get into .loop, everything shows up here in alphabetical order. When you get down to the real estate sales contract, you'll see that there are several different versions of it. We've got one for land, and we've got two actually of each. We've got land with calculations, land without calculations, new homes with calculations, new homes without calculations, and you're looking for residential. All easy to see right there. I don't care whether you choose the one with calculations or without. For you starting out, maybe with calculations, except because we know it's going to be correct. My concern is that you don't understand then how the form works, and it's not real intuitive, but we'll get to that on Wednesday when we're actually writing the contract. I don't think we'll even get started on that today. All right, so stop share again.
I will say if you go to share screen, I think it's where it's blue, it will like move with you. Where it says screen, it says screen whiteboard and
Up here?
Yeah, and you hit share. Every time you like navigate.
Then it will?
It will move with
Thank you. See, Brett tried to tell me that one day and I couldn't understand what he was telling me. Okay, we'll see if that works. We'll see if we can still catch Olgie here. All right, so back to this. All right, so residential real estate sales contract, a copy of the pre-approval letter. Please don't be out showing any buyer, any property without a pre-approval letter or proof of funds. Please don't. All right, it's not good for anybody for you to be doing that. So you'll need that. Copy of the earnest check. This is one of those things that needs to be updated here a little bit. Some buyers still do write checks, but not very many. Most of the time we're dealing with the electronic transfers these days. But I do still like to talk about this because this is a conversation you need to have with your buyer. Buyer, how much money are you putting down as your earnest deposit? What do you feel comfortable with? You may get a notification from the listing agent that it has to be 1%. Since I love it the way when listing agents actually say it that way. Since we don't have to have earnest deposit to have a valid contract, what they're telling you is that here's Olgie. All right, and I'm plugged in over here, so watch for the cord. Okay. So it certainly doesn't have to be a certain amount, but what they are telling you is that the seller won't seriously consider your offer unless it's a certain amount. And it's kind of come around to be, I don't know when and how this happened, but 1% of the sales price of the property. Ask your buyer if they're comfortable with that. If they're not, what are you comfortable with? From a seller's perspective, yes, of course they want 1%. They want as much as they can possibly get. From a buyer's perspective, we've got a balancing act to go here. We're trying to minimize their risk, but make their offer a good, strong offer, right? So that's really a conversation for you to have with your buyer. Tell them that the money's at risk, but how much are they willing to put down? All right, so copy of the earnest check, or you need to know how they're going to be making that earnest deposit. The seller's disclosure addendum, which is, you'll find that on MLS. 98% of the properties you see will have a seller's disclosure. There will be some of those that do not. I always ask for one. And if you find out from the listing agent that there's not going to be one available, we have to address that on the contract because our contract talks about it being there. And so we can't just ignore it. All right, so seller's disclosure addendum, as I said earlier, I like to send those out to the buyer before we ever go look at the property. There may be something on there that makes them realize they don't want to see the property anyway. So you cut down on some showings that way, some unnecessary showings that way. But at this point in time, if you've shown the property and they're ready to make an offer, this is one of the first things that you can send to them to keep them busy and occupied while you are writing up the offer. We have to have their signatures on the last page, their initials on the bottom of every page there. So you can be preparing that and send that onto them. Same thing with the lead-based paint disclosure addendum, if that applies. At what time, at what kind of properties does the lead-based paint disclosure addendum apply? Yeah, she's got such a tiny voice. Did anybody hear that?
It's not
I know she wasn't confident enough. Say it out loud. Say it out loud, Serenity.
1978 house before.
Right. Any property built before 1978, right? There should be a lead-based paint disclosure again in MLS. If there is not, I'm not asking if one's available there. I'm telling the agent that we have to have one. That is a federal requirement. That is not something that we can just say, I have never, ever not gotten one, but I can see how at some point that might happen. But it's a federal requirement and heavy fines if it's not there. All right. Company franchise addendum, again, that's our affiliated business addendum. We have an internal one. There may be one coming. I know RE/MAX still sends one to us. Realty Exec still sends one to us. Some of the smaller brokerages, some of the small boutique brokerages will have that included in the documents in MLS with a place for the buyer's signature. And there's no reason for your buyer not to sign that. So assign your buyer's names to those as well. Have to have a legal description. That has to go on the contract somewhere. That again, may be something that it's in the documents on MLS that the listing agent has included a separate legal description addendum. And if that's the case, then pull that in and have your buyer sign that too. We have to have a legal description on our contract. It's required on our contract. And then any other documents in the MLS supplements, other listing agents will put in things like offer instructions. That doesn't have to be signed by anyone. That's just informational. But there may be other things in there that they want the buyer to acknowledge receiving and become part of our contract. If you ever have a question on that, talk with your coach, talk with me, talk with Kristen about what needs to be involved in the contract. There's some things that some agents kind of try to slip in there that I don't want part of our contract. So just be real careful about that. Always ask questions. All right, so then it's 9:53. It's time for us to take our break. So we'll get to the rest of this after our break. I'll see you all in 10 minutes. All right. All right, we're back. All right. So here we go. All of those things are documents that you need in your loops in dot loop. Writing an offer, let's even back up just a little bit from there. You're walking through the property with your buyer, all right? Your buyer that you have the pre-approval letter for and you have some kind of written agreement with, all right? So you're walking through and you are looking at the seller's disclosure, your buyer's looking at the seller's disclosure. You will get your realtor eyes on as you're walking through the property. And if there are some shelves in the basement or garage that aren't addressed on the seller's disclosure, talk with your buyer about, hey, well, do you want those shelves included? Right? They don't mention them on the seller's disclosure. They're not attached, but we can ask for them, or they are attached. Let's make sure that the seller is leaving them. Your buyers for a lot of buyers will ask for the refrigerator to be included in the sale. So check to make sure whether it's included on the seller's disclosure. Same thing with washer and dryer. Those are the three common ones that we see. If your buyer starts asking about, oh, look at that entertainment, center down in the basement, or that dining room set that fits so perfectly in there, that's a whole different animal. We really prefer to stay away from those kinds of things, but you will, of course, be asked about them in certain situations. There really is no reason for us to have those kinds of things on our real estate sales contract, because learning, all of you, kind of fresh from your pre-license class, you know that there's a difference between real property and personal property. Personal property really shouldn't be on our real estate sales contract. They should be on a bill of sale. We shouldn't get involved, but of course we do. Do you know the value of a dining room set, right? Or that entertainment center in the basement? So, and then if your buyer is asking about a lot of those kinds of things, then, say, hey, let's talk about the real estate first. We don't want something about that to squirrel our real estate transaction. So we'll do that separate. All right. So, but you're walking through and you are the one also, because you'll have your realtor eyes on. We're not inspectors, but as as brand new agents, you're not going to feel that you know this, but anything that shows up as a possible red flag, and you're going to learn these things. If there are water stains on ceilings, we want to, kind of check those out, see if they're addressed in the seller's disclosure. If not, try to get the information from the listing agent on it. If you see that there's and again, we're not structural inspectors, structural engineers, but if you see a big crack in the foundation wall, or you see evidence of some settling, if doors don't close and there are lots of cracks above doors and windows. So those kinds of things are the things that you're looking for, as well as, trying to meet your buyer's criteria. They're looking for how their furniture is going to fit. And a lot of buyers also are looking at those material facts and material defects, as we call them here, anything that might change their mind. So you have all of those questions, but I think one of the most important things is comparing what's there to how it's addressed on the seller's disclosure. Because then as you're walking through the property and the buyer's saying, oh yeah, this is the one, we want to write an offer on it, then so you're making your notes what you're going to be talking to the listing agent about. And yes, I think you should call the listing agent on every single property that you're thinking about writing an offer on. I think that should be just an automatic thing. Will that agent call you back? Well, maybe not, right? But you're leaving a message for them or texting them, asking these specific questions, the things that came up between you and your buyer. Hey, are those shelves staying in the shelves that are in the storage shelves that are in the garage? My buyer was somewhat interested in it. Oh, and that's how I always say it. I've got a buyer and we're thinking about that. They're thinking about making an offer, even though your buyers are probably jumping up and down with excitement, but, try to keep that real low key. We don't want to give away anything about our buyers necessarily at this stage of the game. And the buyers, if they write an offer, are thinking about their refrigerator, but their refrigerator on the seller's disclosure says it's not staying. Do you think there's a possibility of that? So there's no reason to not ask those kinds of questions. But you're also asking, hey, is there any other activity on that? Do you have any other offers? How much activity have you had on it? They might not be able to tell you if there are other offers or what the terms of those offers are, but asking about the activity that they've had. If we do write an offer, how can we accommodate the seller's preferred closing date? What's the seller looking for? Would they like as soon as possible, or what's their situation? You may get, and you'll get the whole spectrum of agents out there. You'll get agents that will answer you with yes and no answers, and that's all the information you're going to get. You'll get some real chatty agents that are probably telling you things that they shouldn't be telling you. So that's okay. You can ask whatever you want to ask. I encourage you to ask all those questions. See how much information you can get. All right, so call the listing agent, ask what's going on with the property, any other offers, etc. You don't want to do all the work of writing an offer to find out they just accepted another offer. And that's happening a lot in this, in this world. Certain properties in certain areas and certain price ranges, you may be in competition with several other offers. And if you can find out the terms of those and present that information back to your buyer, again, they might say, oh no, we weren't going to offer that much. Also kind of a learning experience for some buyers. Also, you need to know how to position your buyers. If there are multiple offers, you need to submit a clean offer. Well, you always need to submit a clean offer and not ask for a lot of extras. All right. Do a CMA of the neighborhood to help the buyers to determine what would be a good offer, because once again, we cannot tell them what to offer. We can tell them this is what the numbers tell me, but buyer, you are the one and only person in the whole wide world that knows what that property is worth to you. Buyers need to determine their offer price, how much earnest deposit they're going to be putting down. So these are things that you're presenting to them and getting their answers for. You need all of these answers. Oh, another thing, before I move on. So when you're with the buyers and they're saying, yeah, we're going to make an offer, and you say, okay, I'm going to be calling the listing agent here with these questions, anything else that you want me to ask them about, and then prepare my buyer for, all right, you all go get something to eat. It's going to take me a while because I'm making this phone call, because I'm going to be doing a market analysis for you. And it's going to take me an hour to an hour and a half to write the offer, right? For me, after being in the business 39 years, it's going to take me a good hour and a half to do all of this stuff. So don't punish yourself. And then, but then also, as so often happens, you're out at 4 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon and there's a 6 o'clock deadline on this property, right? So that's your very first phone call to the listing agent, not even to me, to the listing agent. Hey, I see that there's a 6 o'clock deadline. I know I cannot get it to you at 6 o'clock. What can we do? Right. So, and they may say, oh, that's fine. I just wanted them all in. I'm not meeting with them until tomorrow morning, just have it to me by 9, so that, if they tell you no, drop dead deadline of 6 o'clock, you're probably not going to get it. Right. You're probably not going to get it done. Just be honest.
Send that to your buyers, you just.
They've got and I would say they've got what I believe is an unrealistic deadline, and we can't get our offer in, and it won't be concerned. And tell your buyer I did my very best, right? I told them what our situation is. So yeah.
Can you call the listing agent and ask them for like an extra half an hour or anything?
Sure. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Call them and say, I know I can't get it in by 6. What can I do? Right? Yeah. So, and they very well may say, yeah, that's fine. They say, okay, well, if you have it in by 7, right? Because bear this in mind too, when we, as a listing agent, when we put a deadline on a property, if we are doing our jobs correctly, if we say 6 o'clock, I want all offers in at 6 o'clock, I now, as the listing agent, have to spend some time putting those in the spreadsheet that I have to present to the seller, right? Or, I'm writing out a comparison of all of them, right? Preparing to present to my seller. So a lot of agents will say, yeah, just, get it to me as quickly as you can, or whatever. So, but just bear in mind that it's going to take you some time. This is not something we're going to do in 15 minutes. All right.
So you have to fire them. Just write it up real quick. Don't say, okay, just say, no, that's not how.
Exactly. We want to make sure everything is correct, right? Yeah. Yes, yeah. You might want to, again, this is just one of those things that you all knowing, we hope what is those are things you can prepare your buyer for through the whole process, right? if you are showing the property, chances are in MLS, you already know that there's a deadline for an offer. And if the deadline for the offer is at 6 o'clock, call that listing agent first. If you know you're not showing the property until 4, right? Because that's your buyer's schedule. Say, they've been working every day. This is the earliest we can get out. And prepare your buyer with that information before you maybe even go see the property. Because a lot of listing agents will put that offer deadline right there in the showing agent information, not in the public comments. Okay. All right, so how much are they willing to put down for the earnest money? Their closing and possession dates. That's something that you should know about your buyer, again, probably before you ever go show the property. What is their situation? Can they not close for 90 days? Do they have to close within 30 days? And so you still ask the question of the listing agent, how can we accommodate the seller? My buyers have some flexibility if they do, or my buyers need a 20-day closing. Does that work for your seller? If it doesn't work, why go to the trouble of writing up the offer? All right. Home warranty, something you should always be talking with your buyers about. It's on MLS whether the seller already has a home warranty in place on the property that they will be transferring to the buyer. And if that's not the case, ask your buyer. Explain to your buyer what a home warranty is. Does everyone in here feel comfortable enough to explain to their buyer what a home warranty is? If not, that's one of those things that you should be checking into. Ask your coaches about that, right? A home warranty is not an insurance, but it's a warranty on the systems of the property. Okay, if we know that because again, looking at that property and the seller's disclosure, if we know that the furnace and AC is 15 years old, we also know that that's kind of the expected end of its expected lifespan. If the water heater's 20 years old, yeah, that's probably going to go out. And Murphy's Law tells us that it's going to go out in the first 2 weeks that the buyer owns the property, right? Right. That's just the way that works. So, but if it's all brand new systems in there, do we need a home warranty? Right. So, all right, have those conversations. What kind of inspection period is the buyer looking for? And again, we have a default in our contract that we'll talk about on Wednesday. That's 10 days. On all of our timeframes, we have a default in the contract. Look at that 10-day period of time. There's going to be one weekend in there, right? And a lot of inspectors will inspect on Saturdays, but they're usually backed up on those Saturdays. So you probably not going to get them this Saturday for that. Good luck getting any inspector out on a Sunday, for anything. And then also make sure that there aren't any holidays in there. Everybody takes holidays off, even inspectors. So make sure that, and then also the buyer's schedule. It is not imperative that the buyer's there for the inspections, but it's a really good idea for them to be there for at least part of it, at the ending part, if nothing else. Just for the wrap up. Most inspectors give kind of a wrap up at the end. So that's why we're talking about the inspection period. How much time do we really need? Any additional inclusions or exclusions? Again, that's now our comparison between what we see in the property and what the seller's disclosure says. If they are asking for the refrigerator, washer, and dryer. That kind of thing. Any other additional terms? If there's a dead tree in the backyard that they want the seller to remove, that's another thing that we can put in the contract. And then how long do they want to give the seller to consider the offer? We have a default of 5 days in our contract, and that is way too long. Yes, as a buyer has the ability to retract their offer anytime before communication of acceptance, if the buyer does find another house that they want, but 5 days is too long. You would find out in your conversation with the listing agent, when will the seller be considering offers, if they are holding off until Sunday night to look at all offers, or are all offers being presented to the seller as they come in? All right, how long does and that's another thing that you might find out in your conversation with that listing agent. Listing agent saying, well, the buyer's left, or I'm sorry, the seller's left town over the weekend expecting showings. A lot of sellers are doing that these days. And so I won't be communicating with them again until Sunday night. Okay, so make sure that your expiration accommodates that. All right, and additional info, you'll need to fill out the sales contract. So this is a conversation that you're having with your buyers throughout the process. The legal names of your buyers, That's why the best place to have that is on the buyer agency agreement that you have. Or the buyer agreement that you have. The legal name of the seller, we get that information from the tax records. Or my personal favorite is to get that information off of the seller's disclosure. Most listing agents will list on the seller's disclosure how the seller wants their names on a contract. And so it may be Sam and Sally Seller, it may be the trust of Sam and Sally Seller. That won't show up on the tax record. So another good question to ask the agent is, are the names on the seller's disclosure how we want them on the contract? We have to have that legal description. If the listing agent has not put a legal description addenda in at the MLS documents, then we'll be getting that from the tax records. Readily available through our MLS system. Any MLS supplements to the property, we've already talked about the seller's disclosure, the lead-based paint disclosure, and the addendum. Some of the other things that may show up, some sellers are putting out there, if they think it's a pretty popular, going to be a popular property, the sellers have already included in its present condition addendum. As we get it, there may be a septic inspection addendum on there on certain properties if that applies. Other times of the year, we may have a cold weather waiver inspection addendum where we can't test the air conditioning when the temperature hasn't gotten above 70 degrees. If it's got a pool or a hot tub, there's probably going to be one of those. So you're looking for all of those in there, what information is on there, and sending those to your buyer for their initials and signatures as well. You need to know the financing terms that your buyer is going to be including on the offer. We don't need to know we don't need to know all of the buyer's financial information, but we do need to know what kind of loan. We need to know, and some of this information's on the pre-approval letter. Some pre-approval letters give you all the information you need, others do not. We need to know if it's a 15-year mortgage, a 20-year mortgage, a 30-year mortgage, whatever it is. We need to know at what interest rate they are qualified. That's one of the questions on our contract is will the buyer have a cap on the interest rate they are willing or can pay on that property, or are they willing to pay whatever interest rate is the prevailing rate on the day of closing? So those kinds of financing terms, and what their down payment is, what kind of loan it is. And the listing agent's agency role, I don't have anything pulled up on MLS here, but we find on MLS how that seller is being represented if they are. It's going to be one of three things on a property in MLS. It's going to be that they're a designated agent, just as you are always a designated agent or a transaction broker. They can be a seller's agent, but only if they are the broker of that office. So if it says seller's agent on MLS, I would always ask the listing agent. So are you the selling, you're the broker? You are truly a seller's agent? And that's all, the further you have to take it. If they say yes, then that's where, usually they will follow that up. If you say, are you the seller's agent? They will usually correctly follow up, yes, I am the broker. Right? If they don't say that, there's still a question in my mind, but all you can do is what they tell you. Or sometimes in MLS, you will occasionally see transaction broker is the capacity. There are some of those, again, some of those smaller boutique type brokerages out there that do only work as transaction brokers. So it's going to be one of those three things if you're on MLS. If you're not on MLS and this is a for sale by owner that you have found outside of MLS, that's a whole different thing. So call me or talk to your coach about that. Okay, but because we have to have that filled out before we have our buyers sign it on page 13 of our contract. I know we're not going to get to that today, so that'll be on Wednesday. All right, and required key partners or required KW and KC Metro internal documents, buyer's estimated expense worksheet. Your broker requires that because Kansas and Missouri both require that. When you're writing an offer on a property, you have to have the buyer's estimated expense worksheet filled out. You have to. That is one of the things that our brokerage will hold your commission check for if it's not in there. You won't get paid. right? Because the brokerage gets in trouble if it's not there too. You get fined by KREC or MREC, and the brokerage gets fined by KREC or MREC. So that's one of those things that I'm going to be hounding you about. The purpose of it is to let the buyer know that there are costs to buying a property over and above their down payment. Or if they're paying cash, over and above the sales price. So it really doesn't do any good to do that after the fact. Right? It doesn't do your buyer any good. You are not fulfilling the purpose of doing that form. The purpose of the form is to let this buyer know they're going to be closing costs. Do we need to ask the seller to cover all or part of those closing costs? Some buyers have done, rightfully so, are very proud of themselves for having collected their down payment for their loan and don't realize that there's going to be an additional $5,000 in closing costs on their loan. Where are they going to come up with that? All right. Your exclusive buyer agency agreement, or we'll just start, I hope that I get in the habit of just calling it a buyer agreement on there. Because you can't show property in the world after August 14th without having something in writing. And then our in-house affiliated business disclosure. And that's all that we have on that. Okay, does anybody have any questions about any of that? Oh, there's a chat here waiting for me. Oh, Autumn answered the question. All right. Built before 1978. Very good. Exactly. Okay. All right. I know this isn't real, this isn't real exciting stuff. This isn't the sexy part of what we do, but
It's
it's important stuff. Exactly. All right. I just don't want to lose anybody. All of that kind of makes sense. Anybody have any, because anybody that knows me knows that I encourage questions in here.
It
Right?
seems like knowing this is what's gonna make you the top, you the big bad, you man. No, I don't know.
Which is where we all want to be, Doug. You're right.
I got that. You got that.
Hey, that's exactly right. All of these things can be dealt with before you ever sit down to write the offer. And if there, again, I encourage you all, have your cheat sheets with you, right? Carry one of these around with you when you're showing property so that you know what you need to know from the buyer, so that you're not calling them 17 times through the process. And yeah, how does that make you look, right? So yes, absolutely. Not only are you prepared and look professional with your person, with your buyer, but you're also going to look very professional with the other side. Starting out looking like that puts your buyer in a really good, I think, good position, right? If you're asking all the right questions and being professional with that listing agent, and then when your good, clean, well-written offer shows up, you are psychologically telling that listing agent, hey, I'm going to be an excellent agent to work with, right? we're going to be working really well together, which then that listing agent, we hope, expresses to the seller. It's like, you may not be the best offer, but if you've done the best job of presenting your offer, that may win out. Right? If you've done a sloppy job writing the offer and wasn't where you weren't prepared with the information of your buyer or with trying to accommodate the seller on anything, you're probably going to go on the bottom of the pile. And some of those listings are getting piles. So okay, but great point, Doug. That's why we're doing this. The whole point of this whole exercise. Exactly. All right.
Thoughts on the offer summary page, kind of just letting them know, here's the nuts and bolts of our offer.
I think that's an excellent idea. In one of two ways that what Laura's asking about, again, it just makes you look like the kind of agent that we all want to work with, right? So you're sending your offer and it's well written and all of that, but you can have a separate page that you send with that, or in the body of an email that you're sending to them. Here's the breakdown of our offer, right? Sales price, closing date, type of offer, any inclusions or exclusions that you're including, right? Basically all of the blanks that you're filling out on the contract, but in a real, right, on a one-page document, right? So absolutely, I think that's a great idea. Because again, if the listing agent they've accumulated 12 offers that they have to present all at the same time, they probably have some kind of spreadsheet. So you're just giving them a real easy way to put that into their spreadsheet. Yes, I think that's a great idea. Anything else? I know some of you sitting here are thinking, well, I don't know enough. I don't even know what she's talking about. This is all a foreign language, and that's okay too. It'll all start to make sense at some point. But again, practice, practice, practice. Start writing practice offers.
It'd be nice if we had a nigga work with dial in our back pocket just to put, yeah.
Oh, Doug, well, you kind of do. That's right, exactly. That's why I really prefer a heads up when I know you're gonna be out showing buyers, so that, yes, I may get a text from you. I am absolutely happy to try to answer any question in the heat of the moment for you. Absolutely. Yes. Okay.
What's going on?
I am so, well, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that.
That's.
Let me get back to, all right, well, actually, we'll just start in over here. All right, so we have that ready for you. I see Mark back there making or taking photos of this. Mark, this is a document that I can send you. Okay, all right. And Doug, all right, so easiest way so that's kind of where I was with that, and I'm not sure. I took it all the way. Make sure you've got my phone number. Have we texted? I can't remember. Yeah, okay. So send me a text, and in that text, send me your email address. Okay, and so yes, I will absolutely do that. Okay.
Oh, in the files on Facebook?
Yeah,
Oh, it's in the files on Facebook too, but Johnson said?
yeah, that's what I thought, like, a lot of.
Oh, yes, yes. All of Kristen's power tools are also in the files on Facebook.
Just make sure everything else is informed.
Okay.
Right, there you go. Right, yeah, that's part of it, except they're ready to make an offer one. There are. Yes, we need to clean it up in all places. Absolutely, you're right. Yep.
Yeah.
So we're going to start in the last 30 minutes of this class. We're going to start in here. There we go. I do have a 2024 sample contract here. We are getting a different contract to start using in August. We're going to go over this one because there wasn't anything removed from this one. There were things added to this one. And so I will talk about them, but I don't have it up here. Actually I probably could pull one up if I thought about that over break, but I'm actually getting my formal training on the new forms tomorrow afternoon. So on Wednesday, when we come back together, I will have the new one pulled up and we will talk about it, but most of this has not changed. And quite honestly, even the changes that they made on the contract, if you were doing things, if you've been out working with clients and customers, if you were doing things the way that you've been trained to do it, there's really nothing that's going to change about the way you do business, right? It's all just now a little more transparent on our documents. So I have this available again for anyone that wants one. I'm guessing I'm going to send one to Mark and to Doug. Anybody else that wants one here, and it's called the 2024 sample contract. I have written in blue the information that needs to go there, and in most cases where you find that information. So we're going to start out here, and Wednesday will be a full day too, because it's a 16-page contract. I'm not going to go over every single line in that 16-page contract with you. I do expect you all to be familiar with them. So we do talk about every paragraph, just not every line. I do want you all to read the contract. There wouldn't be anything worse than, a buyer asking you about something that is in the contract, and number one, you don't know where that it's there, or number two, you don't know where to find it. So I do expect all of you to be very familiar with our contract. Don't memorize it because they're going to change it on you anyway. I don't have it memorized, but know which paragraphs talk about what and what the contract says. So that's the point of this class. So we'll get started here on this, and then we'll finish all of this up on Wednesday. So the contract is made between, put the names and indicate marital status, and that's in bold and underlined, so it's really important. We have to have the marital status, or if it's not a person, if we're talking about a trust or a business, that has to be clearly identified on here too. But marital status, if we're talking about people, a single person, a married couple, a question that comes up quite a bit. Oh, I didn't bring it in. Markers in. Is this one on? Nope, not very well. Nope, not at all. So, a married person, AMP. A married couple, AMC. A single person, ASP. Right? We don't have to write it all out. You can if you want to, but you know, we're real busy. We don't have time for that. So a question that comes up quite a bit and came up over this weekend. My understanding of the situation was we have a married woman that is putting her house on the market. She bought the house as a single person, but is now married. Does her spouse have to be on our documents?
Yeah.
Yeah. Kansas and Missouri are both community property states. The minute that she got married, her spouse has interest in that property. Our internal documents, our listing agreement has to have the spouse on there. The contract will have to have the spouse on there. Okay,
They got the saying, one takes one to buy, two to sell.
that's exactly the saying. That's right. Always, always. Yep.
I think I and Linda had the conversation about, I mean, we just got married and then of course we got divorced, and we did get divorced, but I'm thankful we did. For that reason.
That reason.
Obviously, like, he stuck with me for life. I'm glad he took the initiative to do that.
Yeah, to explain why, right, exactly, right. So, and because the agent that was asking me about this asked, you know, he wanted to know how he designates her as a married person, but the spouse isn't going to be on it. So of course, my brain goes to, no, the spouse is going to be on it. There are some situations, if it's a divorce or if it's a divorce, one party is not available to sign. Do we have to have it on our listing agreement? Well, yeah, and the answer to that is yes. But if we don't, the title company won't close without that spouse's signature on it, right? Maybe they're in the process of getting divorced and we know that there's going to be a separation of the property in the divorce decree. All right, in our listing agreement, we still really should have that spouse on there. And then if that happens in the meantime, then the title company deals with that. But yeah, the answer to our question is no, a married person, both people should be on our internal documents, certainly on the contract.
Would you mind going over those abbreviations for me?
No, of course, I wish I brought my markers in, of course, right. A married person, AMP. Oh, but I will tell you when you would use that one. A married couple, AMC. A single person, ASP. There certainly are times when you legitimately use AMP, a married person. If it's an estate, if someone's parents have passed and now the children are selling the property. And so we have Sam seller and how can I, okay. But then we also have his sister, Sally Smith. All right. They are each married to someone else. Do we have to have those spouses sign our internal documents? No. Do we have to have those spouses' names on the list, on the contract? No. But the title company will have them come in and sign. All right. So that is when we would have Sam Seller, AMP, and Sally Smith, AMP. Right? They're both married. That's our indication. So that's why indicating marital status is so important. So I usually, as I said earlier, I usually get this information, how we're going to put it on the contract from the seller's disclosure. Because the tax records, even though that's great information to have there, it not be totally updated. It may still have Sam and Sally Seller on there, but there has been a divorce. And it's just Sally Seller that's on the documents. It may be Sam and Sally Seller that are listed on it, but now it's in a trust, right? And those things probably will be reflected on the seller's disclosure. If there's no seller's disclosure, you know, and of course there are exceptions to every rule in real estate, right? If it's a foreclosed property, make sure you've talked with the listing agent or that information might be in the MLS remarks available to you, because the tax records will not be correct on that. I can guarantee you. Okay. All right, then we have our buyer's name. Legal names as the buyer wants to be shown on the deed. Make sure that you're telling the buyer, how do you have your name on all legal documents? This is what's going to be on the deed recorded at the county courthouse. How do you want it? Middle initial, if there are any suffixes to your name. You may know them as Bob and Betty, but it may be Robert and Elizabeth. All right. First checkbox on line 9. If this is a bank-owned property, in MLS, it might be called an REO, real estate owned is what REO stands for. You will have all kinds of indications in the MLS information. You will know if it's a foreclosed property. So bank-owned property, you would check this box here. There are going to be lots and lots and lots of extra documents for you to be addressing in MLS, and even if they're not available on MLS, the listing agent will send them to you. But this is the notification to all parties that we understand that it's a foreclosure. On line 14, improvements on the property include a manufactured or mobile home. This becomes a big deal when you are out, not so much within city limits, so much, although there are certainly some situations in which that might show up, but more when you are out showing rural type properties outside of the metro area. And the reason that we have to know this is because if that manufactured home, mobile home is not permanently attached to the land, it is not considered real estate. It is considered chattel. Oh gosh, there's a word. Did everybody learn that in pre-license class? Are they still teaching that word? Okay. Did anybody have a question on their test about chattel though? That's what I always
Yeah.
wonder. Neither state tells me that that's something they're going to test on, but as soon as I take it out of my curriculum, I know somebody's going to get a test question on it. So I still teach it too. So, all right. And that's why you have to learn that word. Chattel is just another word for personal property. We have to know how the county looks at that mobile home, manufactured home. And so if the county's taxing it as real estate, it can be real estate on our sales contract. And the important part about that is if the buyer's getting a loan, if the county considers that mobile home to be real estate, then the lender will too. If it's not permanently attached to the loan, the lender will not lend on that. And they will want they won't lend. Most lenders won't lend on just land. So they want the land to be owned. So there you go. Okay, so that's why we have to know that. Make sure you are checking with the county on that. I never take the listing agent's word on that. You know, that's one of those things. Missouri says you should have known, and I apply that to Kansas too, right? You know where to get the correct answers. All right.
Wait, you gotta realize, are you on line 19?
Not yet.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I was finishing up on like 14. Yeah,
Well, where do you get the loan?
that what you're asking?
from the county.
Yeah,
From the county.
how do you go to the county? You
Call them.
Okay.
Okay, I'll remind.
Okay. Yep. And you're not going to, and again, that's only if you're working with those kinds of properties. That all becomes kind of obvious to you. You also have to be careful that FHA has some requirements. They will insure loans on manufactured homes or mobile homes that are permanently attached, but there are other criteria they're looking for also. So those are all things that you'll learn if you are working with those kinds of properties.
I've got a little question. You know how, it seems like sometimes the person can sell some land, but not the.
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah.
All over brown grass.
Absolutely. Once again, okay, so what he's talking about, again, well, harken back to your pre-license days, pre-license class days, right? All those subsurface rights or mineral rights. Absolutely. Now here in the metro area, it's rarely a problem. But it is one of those things that is on our seller's disclosure. And that is certainly one of the things that we hope the seller is reading every single question and thinking, oh, that's right, I don't have the mineral rights here. If I don't own them, I can't pass them along to someone else. So, you know, all those questions are on there to help spur someone's memory. So it rarely becomes an issue here in the metro area. But if you are out working in any kind of rural, Absolutely. Now, and I know what you're saying. If the seller owns them but wants to retain them themselves, I would have a problem with that too, probably. However, in some areas, the seller has never owned them. That they were sold to Phillips 66 120 years ago, right? So Phillips owns them now at this point. One of those things, we don't run across it here a lot in the metro area, but if you are out working on land, it is certainly one of those things you're going to run into. Absolutely.
Then they got another one where when you own the land, not the minerals, and all
The airspace.
airspace. Oh, you can have it.
Right, yeah, and it goes from the center, from a spot on the earth, it goes to the center of the earth and up to infinity, right? And once again, now mostly out in the country, now everyone has given an easement in their airspace because all the transportation companies and utility companies have use of our airspace, right, if need be. But we do run across that more in the metro area, but mostly on commercial properties. Right, that I own this property and it's a single-story little tchotchke shop here, and I want to build another 4 stories on top of it that I can rent out as office space and as income property. The city may not let us do that. It may be zoned, or I may not own that airspace. Right.
And we're starting to lose some of that because of drones.
Drones don't have an easement. Right? No, you're right. But all of these things come into play. Absolutely. Right. Right.
They sell people are trying to sell every inch of the earth area.
Right. Drones don't have an easement, but a drone company could buy some of your airspace.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Oh, I know.
Behind that, some.
Whole new-
Ain't nothing left to buy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's like those developments when they want the view to be perfect.
Exactly.
Pay for that air right space.
Exactly.
Hey, I don't want you to mess up my view here. I have the rights to this.
That's exactly right. Yep.
So like that airspace is also prime.
It can be. It can
You
be.
know where they have like, give me 3 feet away.
Right, it's like.
Hey, you can only get me 2.5 feet. I gotta pay for that.
Gosh, yeah, that's why some of those views are, I mean, you're paying for the view too, because they can't build anything.
Yep.
on View,
That is kinda,
it's
that
wild.
kinda make a little sense a little bit.
That makes sense, it's just wild that even air.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's.
Yeah. Yep. But it's all part of our real estate.
Yep. Buy that.
Yep. Okay, so then starting on line 19, I love the minds in this particular group. I love where the conversations go. So identification of the property. And I also do like to point out on line 19, this is our consideration right here. Well, I should have back up on line 1. This contract is between our buyers and our sellers. We are not parties to the contract. The lenders are not parties to the contract. Title company, not parties to the contract. We have 2 parties to the contract, the buyer and the seller. And even if it's multiple buyers, we call them the buyer. Multiple sellers, we call them the seller. They're the only 2 people, only 2 entities, shouldn't even say people. All right. And so down here on line 19, buyer agrees to purchase, the seller agrees to sell. If we ended that sentence right there, that is our consideration for this contract. Back in your pre-license class, every valid contract has to have consideration, something of value for something of value. In our real estate contract, it is the buyer's promise to buy and the seller's promise to sell. So that's it right there. But then we identify the real property and the improvements thereon. And we now call that the property throughout the rest of this document, commonly known as, and so this is where we have our street address. And as I tell you in the sample, we get that from the county records. Don't go by MLS, go by the county records. There can be a breakdown between what's on MLS, what's on county records, and then what the post office calls. And actually, if everybody that came through class with me knows this, that the street address that we identify a property with, 1234 Main Street, is assigned by the post office for their benefit. So they know where to send the mail. It has nothing to do with any kind of legal description, with necessarily how it's on on the county tax records. So get the common address, as the contract calls it, from our county records here.
So do you go to realist for that?
Yes, yes, yeah, on the tax tab, on the listing or realist, either one, because they're basically the same information. Yep.
Hey, what if, the legal description from the county is so long that it don't fit on that line? How did?
You are a half a step ahead of me, Doug. I can see how this is gonna go. Yeah, exactly. All right. So what he's asking here is we get down to line 26. So we have our common address up above on lines 21 through 24. But then we have our legal description here, legal description on seller's vesting deed to govern. All right, we have a tiny little box there. Most, but not all of your in-town suburban type properties are going to be lot and block. And that'll easily fit in there. Everybody remember lot, block, subdivision, county, state, right? That's all we need in there. Sometimes though, you're going to find a lot and block that's been kind of merged with a government survey system. So they're going to have the township and all of that. There may even be a meets and bounds part in there too, except for or including. And then another little tiny parcel. So a lot of it, all of that's not going to fit in here. So to answer Doug's question, that's where we go with the legal description addendum. And as I said, a listing agent, we hope a good listing agent has included that already in there, right? But if it's not going to fit, because it's up to you to fill this in. And if it's already been provided to you by the listing agent, or if you are putting it on a legal description addendum, because that's a full page, there's plenty of room on that thing. All right, then you say in here, see attached legal description addendum. Okay, great questions coming in here. All right, so we have our street address and we have our legal description. Then starting on line 31. This contract, including the fixtures, equipment, and appliances paragraph of the seller's disclosure and condition of property addendum, now known as the seller's disclosure, not the MLS or any other promotional material, provides for what is included in the sale of the property. On MLS, there's a little place for us to put the washer and dryer and refrigerator, and there's an electric built-in stove and all of that, or a freestanding stove. There's a place for that in MLS. If that is different from what the seller filled out, because who's the one that puts information in MLS? The listing agent, right? Who's the person that fills out the seller's disclosure? Right, because can we, it's okay for us to fill out the seller's disclosure, isn't it?
No.
Right, thank you. I like that answer over there. No, not ever. We can fill in. That's exactly right. We can fill in the top line, the seller's identification. We can fill in the address, right? So that we know that's as correct as we can get it.
Mhm.
Everything else has to be done by the seller. We cannot touch that form. Even if you're dealing with an elderly, infirm, a person that can't read, you cannot do it. It has to be.
Read it to them and they tell you when you are to strive.
Nope.
No, can't do that either.
Nope.
Okay.
You call a neighbor, you
Someone
call
else.
someone else.
Guardian or.
Yeah.
Power of
Ex-
You don't wanna be.
It cannot be you. Thank you. And I love Doug's unctuous answer there. No. All right. And so what's on the seller's disclosure is what seller's disclosure is what governs. Doesn't matter what MLS says. All right. Yes, we look at that and then kind of verify that information on the seller's disclosure. Seller's disclosure is what tells us is being included or not included. Then on line 35, we will come back to that when we hit the correct paragraph there, because it's too confusing if we don't. So then starting on line 39, and all of this is in bold, some of it's in capitals, all caps and bold, must be pretty important. If there are differences between the seller's disclosure and the pre-printed list below, the seller's disclosure governs. Because that's what the seller told us in their own words. Unless modified by the seller's disclosure and or the additional inclusions and or exclusions, all existing improvements on the property, if any, and appurtenances, oh gosh, that word that you learned in pre-license and they told you you'd never have to know that again. You do. Appurtenances, fixtures, and equipment which seller agrees to own free and clear, whether buried, nailed, bolted, screwed, glued, or otherwise permanently attached to the property, are expected to remain with the property, including but not limited to. And I love this little list. Our contract, when I first started selling real estate back in dinosaur days, it was a one-page document. It is now a 16-page document in teeny tiny print. We didn't have any such thing as a seller's disclosure back then. It is now an 8-page seller's disclosure in teeny tiny print. And every single line that's been added is because someone had a problem at some point, right? And so then, even though we have all of these disclaimers, we still have this very specific list here. And I find this to be funny with that in mind. It's like, oh, somebody had a problem with one of these. So all attached shelves, racks, towel bars, we expect to stay with the property. Any attached lighting, we expect to stay with the property. Any attached floor coverings, this is where I start giggling when I think about that. Oh, somebody rolled up the wall-to-wall carpet and took it with them. All right. All bathroom vanity mirrors, whether they are attached permanently or just hung on a nail. That's just one of those things. Would you want to move into a property and not have a mirror anywhere available? So that's just one of those, right? So any fences, including pet systems, and I think here they're talking about those buried electronic pet containment systems. Fireplace grate screens, glass doors, the mounted entertainment brackets. We're not expecting the big TV to stay, but the brackets that are there. If the seller wants to take the brackets with them, the expectation is they're going to repair the wall, right? That's what that's all about, okay? All plumbing equipment and fixtures to remain with the property. All storm windows, doors, and screens. And that's one of those tricky ones. If the seller's hired a moving company and it's this time of year, those can easily get packed up, right? So make sure that they're still there. Serenity's grinning. Did that happen to you or something? Or did
I don't think who would have thought of it?
Oh, yeah, once it goes through a court system, it ends up on our contract here. And then all windows, blinds, curtains, coverings, and window mounting components. This is the one that seems to take sellers by surprise all the time. And even though it's on the seller's disclosure, it's in the contract, the sellers will take window coverings with them. And once again, is that something that if your buyer's moving in, 5 o'clock on a Friday or Saturday, and there are no window coverings, right?
Do you mean like blinds?
Everything, curtains, drapes.
The big thing.
Yeah.
The top, that's all pretty.
Uh-huh, that stays too. That's considered. Right, right. And so the listing agent's responsibility, right? Starting from the very first time they're walking through the property, they see those. They see curtains that match the bedspread or match a piece of furniture. It's like, oh, are you planning on taking those with you? If so, our contract says that we expect things to remain. So go replace those now. Go to Target and get something, right? Because here's the thing. So number one, if you take them and don't leave anything, buyer's going to be mad, right? You got one of those pretty balances up there, and it's in the photos. The buyer sees it, and then then the seller says, "Oh yeah, well I'm taking that, but I'm going to replace it," right? Buyers become toddlers, right? At some point in that whole process, if you tell a buyer that if the buyer sees it and then you tell them they can't have it, oh my gosh, you get little temper tantrums. That's right. Right. Even if they didn't want it before, now they really do. Right. So that's with anything, the lighting fixtures, the plumbing fixtures. Any experienced agent has a story that they're happy to tell you. I'll tell you 2 of mine. That's how lucky you are as we finish up our day here. We'll get through this next paragraph, but on our final walkthrough, everything was fine. It was I can't remember if the sellers may have had some things to remove the house, and this is many years ago. So final walkthrough, day before closing or whatever it was. Then I try to go with my buyers and hand them the key, but I try to be there. If the sellers had stuff in the house, I still try to be there the first time the buyer walks through, because I like to see if everything's okay at that point too, but I give them the key, right? It's their house now. So buyer unlocked the door, walked in, flipped on a light, nothing, no light, and say, oh, well, things happen, so went into the kitchen, flipped on the light switch, no light. There was not a single light
Light
bulb
bulb?
left in the house.
Oh my God.
Not one.
It's not expensive. Like, that's-
And I get, because it was not a contentious negotiation, you know, everything seemed to have been fine, right?
So what did you do? Did you? call
Well,
them?
oh yeah, I always have some light bulbs in my car. That's an open house thing, you know, it's a kind of prepared.
Yes, that's happened with light bulbs.
Absolutely. So I always have light bulbs in my car. So I had 2 or 3 that we could put in, you know, in the kitchen or where we needed them or wait. And of course, then I called the listing agent. I walked down the front yard and called the listing agent and she might not still be selling. She was up until a few years ago. And I told her what happened and silence for a couple of seconds. And she said, are you, and she used a word, are you kidding me? And you know, said, so she did. And again, I loved her forever after that. She went out and bought several packages of light bulbs.
So it's-
Yeah, and brought them over, right? So, I mean, right.
Seller, hey, get over here.
All of us have done something like that or should have, right? I've gone over and swept up trash and collected trash. You know, we've all probably bought some kind of appliance or something or a warranty at some point because again, it's not, no, are we required to do that? No, absolutely not. But, you know, keeping everybody happy at the end of it. Right. The other one was, I walked in, that might have been before closing though, that might have been, I'm sure that it was actually, now that I'm remembering. It was a really cool, bathroom sink fixture that looked kind of like an old time pump,
Oh, yeah.
you know, on a farm, right? And, you know, and we all commented on how cool that was. And we went in for a final walkthrough and it had been changed out, right? Buyer didn't like that at all, right? So,
Were you
I-
able to get it back? Or how did you-
I think one of the 2 of us, or we might have split the cost, the 2 agents put it in, because I remember my husband put it in. So, yeah. So just be prepared for anything, right? Damon has a story about the same kind of story about a shower head in a bathroom, because you better believe me, that the buyers know those details. They, you know, maybe not the first time they walk through the house, but if they're there for inspections or any other time, they know those
Yeah.
things and know when things are missing. I do like to point out that from our perspective, we're the ones writing the offer on behalf of a buyer. Buyer's going to initial every page down in the bottom right-hand corner. I also didn't point out that even though we have our customized internal forms for listing agreements and buyer agreements, that will have our logo in the top left-hand corner, everyone in KCRAR and our Heartland MLS use the same contract. So it will have the KCRAR logo up at the top, right? If you run across anything that doesn't, now, well, no, I shouldn't say that. I don't know if they still do it or not. One of the big brokerages here in town puts their own logo up at the top of that, which they are entitled to do, but they don't change anything about the contract. And so then, oh, it's already 11:01. All right, I know I got through the first full page. Oh God, nobody ever.
You're supposed to have the after party. This was the party and now you're supposed to have the after party.
Well, on Wednesday, we will be finishing up. We'll start on page 2 and go through all of the rest of the contract here. Only on page 2, right? Okay, all right.
How often do you offer to do the contracts class?
The contracts class is, the great question is every month. The first week, so last week, that kind of changes out a little bit. So next month, I'll be doing buyers' estimated closing costs and sellers' estimated proceeds. And the resolution of unacceptable conditions. Yeah, those are, yeah. But then the 2 contracts, Monday and Wednesday, are always the same information. I do try to put new information in, you know, every time, but we get through all the basics. And so they are always These are dependent upon my teaching schedule when I'm teaching pre-license. My teaching schedule is I start my pre-license class on Monday, the first Monday of the month. And so I teach those 2 weeks, and then the 2-week contract classes are the following 2 weeks.
Okay.
Usually the third and fourth, but sometimes holidays kind of mess in there too. So, okay, all right.
We can do a review.
Absolutely, and these
Okay.
are recorded and they'll be on the Facebook media, so they're always available there too. Okay. Yep. Well, all right, so again, a reminder, contractscoach@kwkey.com for my email. Text is, my phone number is 913-219-2289. Text me with, and if we haven't exchanged, I can't remember, Autumn, if we've exchanged anything. Autumn's still hanging in there with me. If we've exchanged a text or not, but send me a text just so I have your name. I think I have. Yes, no, that I'm remembering. So, all right. And everyone in here, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for hanging in there with us for 2 hours, Autumn. And I hope to see everyone Wednesday. All right. Bye.